Thank you so much for joining me today at the Studio 360 at the refreshed RESi360, we're previously known as RESiCon. So you're CEO of the Land Trust. For the benefit of viewers of this video, could you explain a little bit about what the Land Trust does and what its role is and how it fits within the residential property ecosystem?
Absolutely. So the Land Trust is a charity, a registered charity, operate around the UK, and we're a land-based, property-based charity. What we do is we take land that's got no commercial value and use that to deliver social value. So I'm a chartered surveyor, trained how to sweat the asset and make money from land and property. But what we do is take that land and property, it's land that's come out of the development process, it can't be developed, it's worthless in many ways in terms of monetary value, but we use that to then deliver social value, the S of the ESG, to deliver environmental benefits, educational benefits, health benefits, bringing social cohesion within communities.
And could you give me an example of some of these sites that may not, for example, work? So I'd imagine, given the price of land in the UK, a lot of it has commercial value. But are these, for example, maybe brownfield sites that don't have any, too expensive to remediate, or is it greenfield land that's a little bit too far away for anything to be developed on? What are the kind of sites that you're dealing with?
So I'll give you two what I class as really good examples. So the first is up in Chesterfield.
Yeah.
It used to be a coking works, heavily contaminated site, perhaps one of the most contaminated sites in Western Europe.
Wow.
Back in its day. There's stuff in there you wouldn't believe. The government cleaned all that up. Now, to get it to a non-contaminated place, that would cost a fortune. You couldn't do that. So they basically got rid of about 80% of the contaminants, and the rest were left there, carefully treated, carefully packaged up. But they needed someone to own that and manage that longer term. So we stepped in there. They paid us an endowment, a sum of money. We don't touch that money, we just invest it. Then the income that's earned off that on an annual basis, we use that to keep that space maintained, to deliver those educational programs, those environmental programs, as well as managing the environmental risk. And there's no commercial company that would do that,
right? Because
you can't make profit from that.
No.
But what we can do is, using the models that we have, we can do that and deliver that social value. So that's the first example. The second example is perhaps the big strategic residential developments that you have, the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 unit schemes. So I'll take you to Bewley in Chelmsford, Essex, scheme working in partnership with Countryside and L&Q. And what we do there is all the green space within the development. Again, it's the byproduct of development.
Right.
Funded differently. This is funded via service charge.
Okay.
So we work with the residents there who live there to make sure that green space is managed in a way they would want it to. So we comply with all the planning requirements and all the management plans. But we work with them, make sure that's well managed, well maintained, and again delivers that social value, protects the value they've made, that the biggest investment they make in their lives, which is buying the property, protects the value of that, but delivers far more and delivers that social cohesion, brings the community together, reduces that isolation that you get, as well as being a great place to live, and all the suds and other assets in there as well that are managed as part of that.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. And I was one of the other sponsors on this event is Environment Bank, and I was having a good chat with them about the emerging biodiversity offsetting market. Do you see a role for the Land Trust there in terms of providing this rewilded land that then can be sold off to developers to help them achieve that biodiversity net gain of 10% or more?
Absolutely, and it's something we've been doing for the last 18, 20 years, and there always will be some new...
Way before the Environment Act.
Way before the Environment Act, absolutely, and there always will be new people that come along and do that and have got a part to play. The difference that we can offer there is the in perpetuity solution, and we worked with government as they were developing the Environment Act and their thinking behind BNG and what it was going to be delivered. And working in partnership with them, we enabled that legislation to be 30 years.
Right.
That's going to be maintained for, and that was really important for us, because what that enabled us to do was to ensure that we could actually manage it in perpetuity, not just for the 30 years. So for a developer, for a landowner who's really interested in sustainability, who's really interested in delivering for the community forever and for the environment forever, and if they're really interested in their ESG scores, there's a hard financial aspect of this, then that's where the offer that we have really comes to the table, because it delivers for that long term, and it's the same, it'll cost them the same, but it's delivered forever. And the risks of some of the operators in this market is after 30 years, what happens?
Right.
And if you're on a strategic scheme which is going to be delivered and selling phases on for 20, 25, 30 years, whilst at the moment 30 years seems a long way away,
Yeah.
you're still going to be selling plots off
Yeah.
to be developed in that time.
Okay.
And so you need an operator you can work with, and you've got the confidence that will be there forever to do that, which is what we can provide.
Okay. And then going back to your point around the service charges and working with residents there. So is your role then the kind of coming together with residents, and a lot of them typically moan about the service charge they're paying and they wonder what value for money they get. Is that your role to come in there, see and try and marry what the residents would like to see that land used with what can actually be used with that land first, and also what is kind of be mandated with that land?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And in some ways, we've got a number of different clients. So we've got one client who is the developer or strategic landowner, and they are very interested, and we work very closely in partnership with them through the planning phase, making sure that they get planning in a quick way, and through the development phase as they're developing out, making sure all that green space is managed well and sells the development well. That's really important. So we understand the commerciality of that, and that is good. But actually it's the end users, the residents, the homeowners, or the people that are living there who are perhaps more important to that as well. That they have that sense of ownership, that this space is my space, so they can feel that it's theirs. They can take pride in it, and they can get involved in making the decisions about what that space looks like and how it's maintained. And there might be certain areas that, can be planted down for wildflowers and be really good for the environment, and other areas that can be closely mown and whatever else. And what I find interesting in this area is when I, myself and my team talk to the residents, you'd think they would want it to be done as cheap as possible.
Yeah, but they don't.
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And in today's economic climate, kind of right here now where we are, September, October 2022, then cost is probably a more deciding factor.
Of course.
But in other times, in different economic climates, I've been with residents who said, no, we want to spend more.
Oh, really?
We want the cost to go up because we want this area to be a place that we can be really proud of, that delivers the community benefits that we want here. And the way that the model works, for an extra £10 a year for each resident, actually you can deliver a lot more. And so, that's interesting to see how that plays out and how you can then affect and change that delivery model to work with the residents as the local residents' needs change to deliver for that, both in terms of new people moving in and out, but also as the wider economic climate changes and the local community need changes as well. And so we can play around, do we need a bit more health activity, a bit more environmental activity, working with local schools, a bit more educational activity.
And then that's presumably where the social value comes in, because you're opening this up not just to the residents, but the wider community and creating the...
Absolutely. Set up a steering group with the local authority and key stakeholders, and making sure that we use that green space, that we sweat that property asset, going right back to where I started as a chartered surveyor, sweating that asset to make it deliver for community need, that maximising the social value from that.
And presumably then you must see a fair amount of opportunity working with the likes, build to rent's very popular here, the emerging single family sector where, it's rented homes rather than rented apartments, and there's lots of green space there.
Yes.
And these are backed by, a lot of these single family developer operators. They're backed by institutional capital. ESG is high on the agenda. They want to do green and they want to do good.
And it's that quality offer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we are looking at the moment is, working with the new government around the regulation around the service charge market. It's a largely unregulated market.
Yeah.
Lots of different operators who are managing these green spaces. Legislation, isn't particularly strong at this stage.
Okay.
But actually trying to say, let's look at what best practice is.
Yeah.
How can we deliver that? Setting the standard there and then getting the legislation to that standard as well. If people are, spending their biggest investment they ever make is on their home.
Yeah.
So they need a say in that. They need to be able to contribute that. They need to determine how this space is within which they live. And so, absolutely, that quality offer, that ability for people to be involved and have that emotional ownership about this space, even if they don't legally own it,
And lastly, nutrient neutrality. I don't know if you were here for Lawrence Bowles' for Savills' excellent presentation about how that's squeezing residual land values and it's squeezing developer profit. But actually, is it something we need to be taking? We need to be actively considering about this. There's hints that Liz Truss may rip it up, seeing it as needless burdensome regulation on developers. I suppose your view would be though, that we need to take this in a more holistic view of value.
I think this is, and I think Lawrence's presentation was excellent actually, because what that was doing was showing all the different asks of what we're trying to get from this land as it's developed, whether that's BNG, whether it's local schools, whether it's road improvements, or whether it's nutrient neutrality, or whatever it is. And developers and investors will want to see the ESG scores, and we're trying to squeeze as much out of this as possible. So yes, it's one of those things that we need to do. Can we help with that? Absolutely. You know, we've been delivering SANGs. We're one of the country's biggest owners, operators of SANGs, suitable or natural green space, around the country. BNG will certainly be doing lots of that going forward. And yes, that nutrient neutrality is something that we're really already talking to a number of different developers and operators in that area.
Could we see nutrient offsetting, do you reckon, at some point in the future?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
That could certainly do that as we do the other aspects. And we're really keen to work with people who operate in this area whose developments are hamstrung because of this, to work up a solution which works for them, which will get that planning process unlocked.
And lastly, just want to go, there's been a lot of criticism about this concept of offsetting. Do you think it's a valid one, or do you think, or should developers be doing more to mitigate on site?
Wherever possible, the mitigation should be done on site. Clearly, that is better. And there's something there with actually the local community who are moving into that development to understand the natural environment and how that works. But the pragmatic solution is that isn't always possible. And so there's going to be times when that needs to be done off-site, and that's where this comes in. There are other organisations and other charities who will campaign and will put their view forward on the planning process. And that's great that we've got that. It's great we live in a democracy that have got the ability to do that. Where the Land Trust fits in, you say, okay, well, democracy is determined that planning approval has been given.
Yeah.
So what we're there is to try and do what we can to make sure that is implemented in the best possible way for the environment and for the local community, because the local community is part of the environment. So we need to get that holistic improvement and squeeze as much improvement as possible from that.
All right, well, Alan, thank you so much. Really great conversation.
Thank you.